You're listening to In Your Pants with Dr. Susie G, the physiotherapist for your privates, helping you get in the know down below.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Susie G, and thank you so much for joining me on another In Your Pants podcast episode. Today is all about the dangly bits. So people who have penises, who love penises, or just want to learn about how dangly bits work, this show is definitely for you. Without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce our guest to the show before we get the party started. Dr. Tanginika Cuascud Vega is a clinical sexologist, sexual health educator, and surrogate partner therapy facilitator. She's the founder and principal of Texas Sexual Health in North Texas. She partners with pelvic floor specialists, sex therapists, counselors, and other health practitioners in finding solutions for sexual dysfunctions and intimacy concerns. She has a doctorate in human sexuality from the Institute for Advanced Studies in Human Sexuality in San Francisco, California, a postdoctoral studies in neuroscience from Emory University, and a doctorate in business administration from Argosy University in Illinois. She also has an MBA from Inter-American University of Puerto Rico and is a graduate of the Institute for Future Global Leaders of the University of the Virginia Islands in St. Thomas. Dr. Tanginika has her private practice, Texas Sexual Health, in North Texas. Currently, she is the chair for the Student Health Advisory Council of the Grapevine Colleyville Independent School District in Texas, which provides advice on health initiatives and curriculum, including human sexuality instruction. She's a board certified by the American College of Sexologists, and she is a member of the World Association on Sexual Health and an ambassador of the American Sexual Health Association. She is also the vice president of the Association of Hispanic Leaders. She has been the resident sexologist for Univision Dallas-Fort Worth and also offers health advice in Telemundo Dallas-Fort Worth and Univision Radio nationwide. Dr. Tanginika has various blogs in which she showcases open, honest, and pertinent health information that is straightforward and bold with a positive attitude. She's been a contributor for Baby Center, Mammyverse, and Voxy Online, and Heart and Soul magazine. Her expert advice has been featured in Cosmopolitan, The Huffington Post, NBC Latino, Vice, and About.com, among others. Her works have been translated to many languages and published all over the world. She's also a published author. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Dr. Tanginika to the show. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Dr. Tanginika. Thank you so much for being on the show today with me.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's tell the audience a little bit about what you do and how you came about doing your profession.
Yes, well, I am a clinical sexologist, a sexual health educator, and I practice and facilitate a very certain modality of sex therapy, very specialized. And basically, I help people with their sexual concerns and intimacy concerns to help them have happy sex lives.
Ooh, yes, happy indeed. And the topics for today that we're going to be talking about, particularly for anyone who has a penis, right? So,
definitely.
So erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, delayed ejaculation, and really any prostate issues that may or may not result from surgical intervention. So those are all really hot topics and topics that I know I get asked about a lot. I'm so excited to get your perspective on all of these topics and how it kind of combines with the pelvic diaphragm and the pelvic muscles. So I'm going to let you take it away with the first topic of erectile dysfunction. And particularly, I think I'm interested in younger men these days. I don't know about you and in your practice, but younger men seem to be having issues with erectile function.
Yes, well, I'm seeing that, and those 4 areas are kind of my breadwinners. 80% of what I do in my practice is erectile dysfunction, ejaculatory disorders, and some post-prostatectomy, and sometimes chronic prostatitis, non-bacterial. So I offer solutions for those who are suffering from those issues. I have a multidisciplinary approach to deal with these issues, and that's how pelvic floor therapy comes into play. I have learned over the years that, again, there's many players when it comes to sexual dysfunction. Some of them are physiological, some of them are psychogenic or psychological, and sometimes it's a combination of both. Usually it's a combination of both, whether it started as a physiological issue and then guys freaked out about it and their partners freaked out about it, and then it turned into this emotional anxiety issue, or they had anxiety and then nothing downstairs works. It's all related. However, I've discovered that if you help the physiology, many times the anxiety related to the function dissolves, and then those people can move on. So I do not offer, talk therapy. I do not sit down with people and just talk about their childhood and how that impacted their sex lives. Yes, we do have conversations about it, but that's not my focus. My focus is to really work with the physiology to make those systems that are not working kind of restart, give them CPR and have them work again so they can start functioning and using those systems again. And then usually, again, happiness comes right after.
A happy ending, A
happy ending, yes. Pun intended.
Totally. I mean, sorry, everyone watching. I mean, these are going to be flown left and right, I think. But in essence, okay, yes. So I think before you talk a little bit about how more about your approach and what are some of the steps to helping with sexual dysfunction, particularly with something like erectile dysfunction, could you give us a little bit of a background, and for the listeners and those watching this video, of what exactly is erectile dysfunction, and when should a guy be concerned?
Yes. Well, before I answer that, let me answer what you asked before, which is that the younger generations are now kind of suffering from these issues, and I'm seeing that too. Probably the youngest person who has walked through my doors has been 22 years old. So currently I have anywhere from 22 to 27, 28 years old, kind of a bunch of them. There are many reasons for that. Some of those reasons are or stem from the lack of awareness and knowledge about their bodies and how their bodies work. And then they're ill prepared to face an intimate situation in real life. But a lot of it also is lifestyle. We're seeing a generation that probably has more poorly than we did back in our day. And also, I see a lot of these young guys who spend a lot of time in the gym, lifting weights and taking care of their bodies, and then their pelvic floors suffer as a result. So they have very lax pelvic floors. We will talk a little bit more about it. So yes, I'm seeing a lot of that. And usually when I see somebody walking through the door and I see that very strong muscular physique, and they had disclosed earlier that the reason why they're coming in is erectile dysfunction, I can almost bet that pelvic floor is going to be in trouble. So that's that. And then, so in my practice, as I said before, I deal with all kinds of issues, but the number one is probably erectile dysfunction. The reason why I came into this practice was actually with the utopia of helping women. Because usually women are more vocal about their issues than men are. So I thought, I'm going to be the beacon of women, and I'm going to help them all have orgasms and enjoy sex. Well, I went to school, did my doctorate degree, and in practice, men started coming instead of the women. And I discovered that men didn't have an outlet really to say to somebody, hey, this is going on. There's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of stigma around it. And there's a lot of notions of like, oh, I'm not masculine enough. I'm not man enough because this is happening. Like if my member doesn't work, if my penis doesn't work, then I'm not manly enough. And they don't have anywhere to turn. So they started coming to me, and I became very, very interested in helping men and started studying more and furthering my education as far as what what is it that's going on? Like, why are all these men suffering from erectile dysfunction? And a lot of them have that one common denominator, which is, again, the pelvic floor dysfunction. So it was kind of in that segue that I discovered that there's a very strong correlation between the health of your pelvic floor and the health of your sex life. So basically that's how, they have kind of been married now for me. I do a lot of approaches when it comes to the treatment of sexual concerns, but pelvic floor is at the forefront of everything that I do.
Shameless plug, everyone. Thank you. Oh gosh. And I have to say that I'll comment on that a very similar story with me and how I became focused on men's health, or anyone that has dangly bits. Essentially very similar. There was no outlet for them. No one was addressing it in a very integrative way and looking at it with a wide lens. I mean, there is no help for these men or people with penises that really is so important. And like you said, women tend to, gather together and communicate and reach out in terms of their health. But men, they're just not there yet. They just don't do that. So now what men have an advantage is to their advantage, as opposed to women, is that men take action. That has been kind of my experience. So women are very easy to talk to about these issues, and they, as you said, gather and they talk to their girlfriends, they talk to their sisters, they talk to other girls about it, but they're not necessarily very motivated to go and seek action and solutions to their problems. Now, men are more hesitant, but when they come to you, they're ready for change, they're ready for action, they're committed, they really want to see something done, they want solutions. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So on that note, in terms of erectile dysfunction, could you tell us a little bit about why that happens for people who have penises? And I know you mentioned psychological, physiological connection between the two, but again, in your experience, where does this come from, and when should a person be, alerted to go seek healthcare advice for this issue?
There are a lot of different causes for erectile dysfunction. It's usually, if we're going to talk physiological, it's usually lifestyle. So high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, any problems with diabetes, medications that they would take for those conditions and other conditions, surgeries that they've had, injuries to spine or back, prostate issues, sleep apnea, gingivitis. So there's a lot of different things that men don't necessarily know that can be contributing factors. Drinking, smoking. Now we go into lifestyle, lack of exercise, or men who are seated a lot, those who spend 12 plus hours sitting in front of a computer, taxi drivers, truck drivers, and then we have cyclists, motorcycle runners, we have guys who lift a lot of weight. So those are other considerations when it comes to erectile dysfunction. And men don't necessarily make that connection, like, okay, what I'm doing is contributing. And overall health is contributing. If you have clogged arteries, pretty much you're going to have erectile dysfunction. So those are pretty much at a greater scale some of the issues that may lead to erectile dysfunction when it comes to the physiological aspects of things. When it comes to psychological aspects, we have anywhere from stress, conflicts in the relationship. That's a big one. If you're not getting along with your partner and you're in conflict and you're fighting a lot, yeah, maybe that penis doesn't really want to work because it doesn't want to sleep with the enemy, quote unquote, right? So, there's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of lack of knowledge and upbringing. So I see in a lot of super ultra conservative upbringings in which sex was deemed as taboo or bad or wrong, then usually those men tend to have a lot of anxiety towards intimate situations, and then they don't understand why the penis doesn't work. And it's because when the mind is telling you this is wrong, don't do this, then the brain puts some blockages in protective mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm not going to award you with this experience because this is dangerous. So there's sometimes a disconnect. There's body issues and image issues that sometimes also lead to erectile dysfunction. So there can be a lot of different causes, and it is very important to determine what that cause is, because depending on the cause, the treatment is going to be more effective or not, depending on where that problem is coming from. I never like to just tell guys like, oh, okay, do this, if I don't know exactly what's going on. And so we do a lot of discovery, a very lengthy conversation, a lot of investigative work to kind of get to the bottom of things, and then start with a plan and a treatment that will help them get to the desired state.
That's great. And it does sound like it's a process of collaboration between you and the client that you're working with. Essentially, it's not a find it and fix it sometimes, but most times in my practice, I find that it is definitely a process of getting to the root cause of what is the underlying issue that's literally trying to just protect you, as you said so greatly about, sexual function. Not having sexual function is some sort of form of protection, whether that's physiological or psychogenic, or both, like you said, in both cases. So in terms of treatment, so you mentioned working with both of those aspects, but you mentioned the pelvic muscles and the pelvic floor. Can you talk about how that impacts sexual function and why you find it to be such an important part of the healing process?
Absolutely. So pelvic floor muscles, as you know, but our audience may not know this, they really have a big job to do. So what I explain to men is not only they're there, first of all, they don't know that they're there, right?
Yes.
So they're like, pelvic floor muscles, like, what are you talking about? Maybe they've heard about Kegels, but only in the context of women, right. Maybe in the context of women who probably suffer from urinary incontinence or who have had children. Mm-hmm. Like, that's all they know if they have ever heard that word. So they don't correlate their pelvic floor function to, this is connected to my penis and to the health of that sexual system. But they really have a great job to do. As you know, all the structures that go through are supported by that pelvic floor structure. So you have it in there.
I do. I'm going to interrupt just to kind of show you guys what we're talking about here. So if you're sitting on your sit bones right now, and we laid you on your back, this is what we would be seeing. There's the penis would be extended here. This is the base of the penis, and all the muscles that Dr. Tanginika is talking about is right here. Here.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And you mentioned something. Actually, can you show it again?
Sure.
That's where your penis starts.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you can actually tell everybody that you have 2-3 more inches than you actually do.
That's right. Everyone's ears perked up, right?
Right. It's like, oh, so I didn't have, 6 inches to begin with. You have you have a little bit more. You have 8.
Yes.
You can accurately say that because the penis actually starts a little bit further back.
That's right.
And so that is part of your penis. But anyways, yes, how does pelvic floor correlate into all of that? Well, all those structures, blood system, all those nerve endings, they're all supported by those muscles of the pelvic floor. Now, usually those muscles, as you know, they have to be healthy, right? They have to be kind of engaged. They have to be in the right place. They have to have the right tone. It's like our arms, right? So this is what I explain to men. Let's say that I am going to the gym and I have never exercised my arms right here, my fabulous arms that you're seeing right now, right? I know. So, and I just decide that I want to lift 30 pounds. Well, 2 things are going to happen. Either, number one, I am not going to be able to even get that weight off of the floor, or I will, but I will have to let it go because those muscles are not strong enough to support that weight. It's kind of the same thing with erections. Mm-hmm. Either the pelvic floor is in tune with everything and can engage and can give you those erections and sustain them, or it may not, or even if it does, they just kind of dwindle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not strong enough. If you have lax pelvic floors, usually that leads to erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. So usually that's what I see. So usually those muscles are kind of stretched, they're kind of meh, they have never been exercised, they're lazy, they can't really work. Now the opposite is true for delayed ejaculation. Usually the guys who come with problems with ejaculation, they take forever. Sometimes they don't ejaculate, they can stimulate forever, either by different kinds of sexual stimulation or by themselves, and they never finish, or they have a hard time finishing. That pelvic floor is like this. It's just kind of one big nut, and it's not going anywhere. And things are pretty cramped and pretty tight inside. And when that happens, orgasm cannot happen, ejaculation cannot happen, because everything is right like this. So you need the right combination of tone and strength to be able to produce those waves, and for those contractions to, contract, relax, that movement to go on, so you can have successful ejaculatory response. And that's pelvic floor in action right there. So I can talk to you all you want, but if the pelvic floor is not healthy, we're not getting anywhere. And that's why I think that pelvic floor is so important. And it's one of the first things that I look at as a culprit of things when people come to see me with those issues.
That's great. What a lovely, analogy, using your bicep muscle as, either it's working for you or it's not. And that's that neurological feedback, because like you said, most men don't understand that it's, muscles aren't just stupid. They're actually receiving information from your brain, from your nerves that go to that. And so when you're working those muscles in a healthy way and you're aware of those muscles, let's get real. How often are people even aware of their pelvic muscles unless something goes wrong, right?
Exactly. So if I may, this is going to sound very crude, but this is one of the approaches that I use to explain kind of pelvic floor and how that works. So we use the arm, and then I kind of go down into that area, and I say, when you don't want to let wind out of your body, you do something about it, right? And so they're like, yeah, I hold it. I'm like, yeah, that's your pelvic floor kind of doing that for you. So if you don't want to pass wind in inappropriate places, like in a meeting in front of everybody, and then being accused of being identified as a culprit, then you engage everything. And then they get it. They're like, oh, really? That's my pelvic floor. I'm like, yes. You are engaging your pelvic floor muscles. And usually that's how they become aware. With that analogy, that's how they become aware. I'm like, yeah, if you don't want to pass wind, that's what you do. And that's one of the many, many different functions of your pelvic floor. They not only do that, but gladly they do.
Right. Well, they get it. And I love that. Like, you're in a meeting, like, this isn't a good time, or first date, you don't want to we all get comfortable at some point, farting in front of our partners. But in the beginning, you want to be your utmost best, and you're definitely not going to pass gas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not going to pass gas. So those pelvic floor muscles must be really, really tight and engaged. Otherwise, they cannot do their job. So it's the same thing with sexual function. They're there to provide a job. They have a job to do, and it's a very hard job, no pun intended. It is a very essential job. They can give you erections and keep you there, and they're also responsible for you for your ejaculation. So for men who have problems controlling that ejaculation, one of the things that we focus on is, how do you take control of those pelvic floor muscles? How do you strengthen them, become aware of them, so you can kind of summon them and use them to your advantage, so you do not finish the job too fast.
Okay. On that note, can you define what premature ejaculation is? Because I think men often, I'll ask them, what do you think premature ejaculation is? What's the definition for you? And they're like, well, I can't sustain an erection. I ejaculate within 15 minutes. I don't know about you, but I want to know what you would say to that.
Well, premature ejaculation doesn't really have a definition. And if you go to different organizations, they will have a different definition.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the definition that I go with is when ejaculation happens before that man is ready. And before that man has some control over it. So premature ejaculation usually happens kind of without advance notice for men. So it's usually something like they're getting stimulated and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is going to happen, boom, and it just happens. And they seem to be kind of disconnected from, like, when is this going to happen? That point of inevitability, they're not too much aware of, and it just happens before they can do anything about it. So that's probably kind of a safe definition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, I do get some men who say, well, it's 30 seconds, or it's a minute, or it's 3 seconds, or it's before I even do penetration. And yes, some men would say, yeah, it's 15 minutes. And I'm like, whoa, lucky you. 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Lucky you. Now, but if it's happening before you intend for it to happen, if you feel like you have no control over when it happens, and if you're unhappy with the outcome, then I do not dispute the fact that you are calling it premature ejaculation, although for probably clinical standards, that would be considered a very adequate sex session.
Okay.
Now, I also always tell men, confirm with your partner. So if you have a partner who is very, very happy with 10 minutes of thrusting, penis and vagina, or penis and wherever else, then probably you don't want to elongate that to like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You don't want to become the 1 hour man when your partner is telling you, like, I am very, very happy with 10 minutes. 15 minutes is work. Anyway, so that's not related to the pelvic floor. However, it is very important that men also kind of check in. Sometimes they have these fantasies of, like, I want to last 60 minutes, and that may not be realistic or necessary.
Right.
Now, they can and they could if they get control of those pelvic floor muscles. And once we learn that control, I am not going to meddle into your business. Whatever you do with your penis, with your stimulation, with your pelvic floor muscles, after you have gained that control, then it's totally up to you and your partner. But yes, the pelvic floor muscles are the ones that may allow you to find that control and allow you to do that for as long as you want.
I love it. And what are your thoughts on being present and mindful, like mindfulness, mindset with sexual function, or for example, premature ejaculation? Do you talk about that at all with your clients, or?
Most definitely. It is very important that they learn to stay in the moment and especially stay with the sensation. So I try to adjust the language, because sometimes when you say stay present, stay in the moment, they don't know what that is. But if I say stay with the sensation, follow the sensation, focus on the pleasure of that particular moment, then they're not rushing, they're not developing that anxiety towards, like, oh my God, am I going to burst before I'm ready? Is this ever going to happen to me? Am I going to stay erect? Instead of focusing on those questions, you don't really enjoy the journey. You're already on the destination. And when that happens, this journey cannot be pleasurable. Mm-hmm. So instead, I teach them kind of step back and start from point one, and then stay with whatever you're feeling at that particular moment. And a lot of it is also, again, learning what kinds of stimulations can lead to that point of inevitability, because sometimes they don't know what that is. Like when they become aware of that point of inevitability, and the point of inevitability is when ejaculation is going to be imminent no matter what, right? They don't know that that's about to happen until it happens. So I tell them, you need to learn this 3 steps before. So not at the point of inevitability, not like, oh my gosh, shoot, it's going to happen now. It has to be like, oh, I'm approaching that. So you then gain that control. You can scale back. You can probably change what you're doing. You can engage some on your pelvic floor muscles and kind of you do your exercises and continue to be sexy while you're doing it. Because I also teach them that it's like, you don't have to sound weird or be weird, you can do this and still be sexy, and continue with your sexual activity the way you please.
Beautifully said. Oh my gosh. I hope you guys got all that. That's really great. Start practicing your awareness. Wonderful.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. And on that, again, in that note of you're mindful, you're aware. Without awareness, how could you change anything? So part of it sounds like what your treatment is just being aware of what is it that ticks your boxes, and because that's going to be different for every single person, just like our thumbprints are different. That treatment plan and what you do and what you're aware of is going to be very different across everyone you meet, so and those pelvic floor muscles, so important, like you're saying, and I love that you're emphasizing that, because they're really important, and coordinating and controlling those muscular contractions, right? Not just especially in delayed ejaculation, as you mentioned, if you're just holding and you're doing 100%, 110%, but you're not letting go, well, how functional is that muscle going to be,
Exactly. And men don't realize, before you contract, you have to come from a place of relaxation. You cannot have a contraction if you're already up here. So to start the wave, you need to come from far, right? The wave doesn't start on the shore. It starts way back. And so this is kind of the same concept. If you're already up in a nut, well, there's nowhere to go. Right. There's nowhere that those contractions can start happening. And if you are in tune with yourself, you learn that ejaculation and orgasm both, they're waves of contractions and relaxation. So you need to be aware of that to be able to make that happen. And yes, there's physical exercises that obviously you do that I also advise on and coach on to be able to attain those goals. But it all starts with awareness. And that's why the passing the wind, passing gas, is so essential for them to kind of oh, yeah, click, get it, right? And the, starting and stopping the urine also helps. It's just that passing gas is funnier. Oh, yeah.
Totally relatable, right? Like you said, we've all done it. We're just not really aware that we're doing it.
Yes.
We've all done it,
Absolutely. So usually it's kind of a happy moment for us. It's a joyful moment. And they laugh, but they're like, oh, wow, yes, you're right. And so I have my little jokes that I tell during the session to help them become aware. Now, probably this happens to you when they kind of start looking inside. It's almost like they're in a state trying to locate those muscles and trying to really turn their eyes inside out or outside in to look inside and locate them. But once they get it, then progress can be made. And that's why for me it's so important for them to become aware of where they are, what they do, and feel them for a little while before we start even the exercises, because it's going to be crucial for them to find them. As if they don't do them right, the exercises, then change is not attained. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that the technique is spot on, that the technique is crystal clear for them to be able to go do the exercises and then change.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. And on that note, I think it's helpful to maybe mention from your end the difference between orgasm and ejaculation, because you can have an orgasm without ejaculation.
It's so funny because I just received an email a few minutes before we started from a guy saying, can you have one and not the other or separate? And yes, orgasm and ejaculation are two activities, two different events. Usually they happen at the same time, and that's why guys correlate one with the other. However, guys can have orgasm without ejaculation. They can have the waves, they can have the contractions with nothing coming out, and they can feel those waves of pleasure, kind of full body and soak it in and enjoy. And they can have multiple of those before they even get to ejaculation. And if you don't believe it, or if it sounds hard for this to be achieved, think about post-prostatectomy. When there has been prostatectomy, besides other issues, guys cannot ejaculate, but they can have orgasms. So the orgasm is not gone. I think there's a lot of misinformation and lack of education when it comes to prostate surgery. Like, oh my God, my sex life is over. Pleasure is gone forever. And it's not true. They can still feel those orgasms, but they're not going to be able to ejaculate. So that's a great example of how you can have one without the other. And I have found men in my practice who have the ejaculation without the orgasm. There's no pleasure. There's no warning. There's just an eruption. And they're like, oh yeah, there, it happened. And it's kind of an uneventful event, pretty undesired, because they're not feeling really the pleasure and the those sensations associated with ejaculating and having an orgasm. So you can have one without the other. And the same systems kind of come into play. However, ejaculation in itself, it's its own event. It's its own system. But usually guys learn from a very early age that those go together, and they think that they're going to be married forever to those two events, and they're going to happen simultaneously for life, which is not true.
Right. And in your opinion, what organ is the most important organ for orgasm and arousal and libido and all that?
There's one very important organ, and it involves the head. However, it is not the penis. It is actually your thinking head. That's the head that you want to use. That's the head that is the most sexy. That's the head that is going to do all the job for you. That's where it all starts. And that's the most important one right here. So you have two heads, guys. Only one is the one that you should really, really be paying attention to, because that one is going to tell you what's going on in the rest of your body, what everything is doing, how everybody is connecting. So you have to be very, very aware up here to be able to control the one between your legs.
Beautiful. And a great note to end on. Honestly, guys, pay attention to your head. This one, not down.
Yes.
That's great. That is awesome. Great. Fantastic. How can listeners and YouTube watchers connect with you and follow you?
I have various means, so they can definitely go to my website, Texas Sexual Health. Very, very easy, texassexualhealth.com, and they can find me there, and there's all kinds of contact information. They can chat with me. They can send me a note, and I'll answer back via email. They can send me an email directly. They can call me. So there's all kinds of good information on the website. They can also follow me on Facebook, either personally, Dr. Tanginika Cuascud, or they can also go to Texas Sexual Health through Facebook. And I also have a YouTube that they can connect to, and hopefully we can connect this to that YouTube channel as well. Absolutely. And they can see all kinds of things related to sex.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for the work that you do. We are a very special breed.
Yes, we are. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I have told you that I use pelvic floor specialists around me, and now I'm starting to refer to you because thankfully, and thank you so much for being remote and for being able to help people from a distance. So people who cannot physically go to a pelvic floor specialist, they can get help through you. You have all those wonderful videos that help guys achieve these goals. So I am very grateful for you. Thank you for the work that you do. And please continue to do that.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to all our listeners and watchers out there. As always, in loving wellness for your pelvis. This is Dr. Susie G signing off. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to head on over to drsusieg.com where you can get more information, show notes, and related articles on today's topic. Also, if you like what you're hearing, head on over to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us a rating and review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again.
Pay attention to your head. This one,